Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we are going to be diving into Team USA's win in the official debut for the 2024 Paris Olympics. They faced off against Nikola Jokic and Team Serbia on Sunday afternoon for the first official game of the Olympics, non-exhibition based. All of the teams right now are entering into group play, and we saw Team USA win this game 110-84. And the story of this game was Kevin Durant, who had missed all of the exhibition games due to an injury, and there was even some reporting that he may not be available for this game either, but ultimately, he does play, and he looked like the Kevin Durant that we all know and love to some degree. I know he's not everybody's favorite player, but in terms of just the pure basketball ability, I mean, Kevin Durant is the pinnacle of a shot creator, an offensive weapon. He came out blazing in this game, came off of the bench. Ultimately, Steve Kerr wanted to work him into it a little bit, considering he hasn't played basketball since April, I believe it is now at this point. And he was unbelievable. He went 8 for 8 in the first half, just took over the game, scored 21 points. He finished with 23 and led Team USA in scoring, but it really is just something so special about watching Team USA, which is filled with the best basketball players in the NBA, and just every time the camera panned over to them, all of them were just in complete awe of what Kevin Durant was doing. And it just goes to show, I mean, again, obviously some of his off-the-court decisions in terms of specifically looking at that move to the Warriors, Kevin Durant has also not been afraid to be a little bit outspoken on social media that makes people, not be huge fans of him. But I just think from a pure basketball standpoint, I mean, they're really, I don't think I've ever seen a pure scorer like Kevin Durant, and there's a chance we go a number of years until that happens. It's funny, I think the broadcast itself might have mentioned Victor Wembanyama, who had just played a little bit earlier in the day when France faced off in their group stage game, but Wemby hit a couple shots there where it's like, well, what in the world are you supposed to do with that combination of height and scoring ability? That's Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant just the most refined version possible. So I know it's kind of corny to be on the appreciate greatness type of stance when it comes to watching this type of stuff, but Kevin Durant is just unbelievable. But as much as KD was great, and I do, of course, I don't want to bury what LeBron James did in this game as well. He was incredible. 21 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. He is obviously the full package as well, and was a massive part in helping Team USA pull away in that second half, as he just shows that, age really is just a number for him, and he continues to, nobody on Team USA right now is playing better basketball than LeBron James, and it does make the who is the greatest player in the NBA conversation interesting. Now, I still feel like definitively I would take Nikola Jokic over him, and I would also say the same for Giannis. It's interesting because LeBron at this point in his career, there's really no debate that from a just basketball player in one given game, do or die, it's hard to make an argument for really anybody other than LeBron. When you want to talk sort of big picture, if you are starting a season from game 1 through the finals, where does LeBron go in that? That's where the age thing really does come into play, because there just only is so much juice that he can really give throughout the course of 82 games and a playoff run. That's where things get a little bit more dicey, but we also saw he won the MVP of the in-season tournament, which granted is its own sort of weird situation right now where we're not really going to be sure of how much stock to put into it. at this point, as it is still a new thing. But take that out of the conversation. Just LeBron James showed he really, really cared about winning that in-season tournament, and I'm very glad that he did. You know, people always find something to clown on you for, but it was an important thing for LeBron, the LeBrons of the world, the Currys of the world, to be able to actually invest themselves into the tournament. Again, I'm getting too far off base here, but he was just unbelievable, and we know in these short bursts, there really is nobody like LeBron, so I did want to take a quick minute to give him some props on that. But really one of the biggest conversations that came out of this game was the fact that Jayson Tatum did not receive a single minute of play in this game, and it's going to be very interesting to monitor what his playing time looks like moving forward. Tatum, given that he's on the Celtics, that they just won the finals, that he didn't win the finals MVP, he has sort of emerged as a superstar that people have sort of been giving their share of criticism to, which I feel like for the most part is unwarranted, because Tatum hasn't really given all that much ammo to NBA fans in terms of why they should dislike him. But when you're talking about Boston and the Celtics, people are going to gravitate towards negative energy when having these types of conversations. But Tatum getting a DMP was definitely surprising to some degree. He had not been playing great during the exhibition games leading up to this point. Now, Steve Kerr said that he, quote, felt like an idiot for not playing Tatum, and that he thinks that there is going to be opportunities for him to play depending on matchups moving forward here in the Olympics. So it's definitely going to be something to monitor, but it's definitely an interesting conversation. Steve Kerr has seen his share of criticism as well in terms of the rotations up to this point. And I'm going to hold off on the Embiid point for a minute here, because that conversation I feel like gets kind of nasty as well. But it's interesting because Jayson Tatum, when you look back at the 2020 Olympics, which was really 2021 because of COVID and all, but Tatum averaged 15 points per game for Team USA coming off of the bench as they went on to win the gold. So it's not like this is Tatum's debut into the Olympics. He was a very key contributor to Team USA the last time they won the gold medal. So what's changed since then? I mean, for one, we have seen, especially this past year, his three-point shot just not be the same level of reliability. So from a shooting perspective, especially when you already have so many guys that are on the ball themselves, that if Tatum's not going to be a catch and shoot type of guy, and that you can't really rely on him from that perspective, it's going to inherently be harder to get him some rotational minutes. Now, that being said, you look at sort of who was coming off of the bench for Team USA in this game in terms of guards, because Tyrese Halliburton also was a DNP for this. So in terms of point guards coming off of the bench, it was really just Derek White, and I'm not even sure if you consider him to be a point guard. He's not at least your prototypical point guard, and Jayson Tatum could be a primary ball handler for Team USA if that's the role they wanted to slot him into. And again, it had not looked all too coordinated with Tatum during those exhibition games, so it's not the biggest shock in the world, but for a player of Jayson Tatum's stature, this is definitely a pretty substantial storyline that's going to be surrounding Team USA for the remainder of their games. Again, we'll see. I think that Tatum is a pretty malleable player in terms of he can be, a primary ball handler option. He can be a playmaker, at least, in terms of setting up others. That was his main role for the Celtics during their playoff run just now. He's extremely switchable on defense. We saw again in that finals run, he was basically playing the center defensively for 2 out of 4 of the rounds there, where he was guarding big guys in the Cleveland series and against Dallas when they won the finals. So I don't know. I'm going to be curious to see whether or not anything does change there. Obviously, Kevin Durant returning to play does sort of... Somebody had to get bumped out of the rotation. I just don't think all too many people were expecting it to be Tatum. But if things were to change, you would kind of have to imagine that it would be in that starting lineup and what Team USA is going to do about Joel Embiid. Because Steve Kerr has been very adamant that he is one of the main leaders on this team, and yet the struggles for him up to this point have been pretty clear, where he was the one player in this game to have a negative point differential. He was a -8 when he was on the court, granted going up against Nikola Jokic, so it was cool that we got to see that rivalry finally, because we've been deprived of it a little bit because of injuries these past couple years. But the lowest plus-minus on Team USA, and I don't love plus-minus as a stat, by the way, so, take this with maybe a little bit of a grain of salt, but the lowest plus-minus outside of Joel Embiid in this game was Devin Booker, who was a +8, and Embiid a -8 on the other end, so it was pretty obvious to anybody who was watching this game that Embiid is just not really having an impact, and that's been the story for all of these exhibition games up to this point. And it makes it that much harder for Embiid when we see the big guys that are coming off of the bench for them. Specifically, Anthony Davis has been a real star for Team USA up to this point. Bam Adebayo playing good basketball as well. And Steve Kerr has talked about how he really does prefer to run that double big lineup of AD and Bam Adebayo. But it is definitely, becoming a conversation with every game that's played. And I don't expect anything to change really there. Again, especially if Kerr is all in on having those double bigs coming off of the bench. But Embiid has just not been a good fit up to this point. He's been getting himself into foul trouble pretty consistently here, and I'm not really sure what is necessarily going to change. He is somebody that, I'm not saying it's impossible for him to play with others by any means, but he is kind of in his own world, and you can say this to some degree with Jayson Tatum, much more of a primary option than a supplementary player. And Embiid has, shown that to be the case for a number of years since he came onto the scene with Philly and really emerged as one of the best players in the world, that he's not really much of a great option when he doesn't have the ball in his hands at least from an offensive standpoint. Now, defensively, he's still an excellent player. I still kind of feel like he looks a bit hindered from maybe it's an injury standpoint on that mark, but the fit has not been seamless by any means of the imagination for Joel Embiid, and that is one area where I feel like we could, going back to that point about Jayson Tatum, if things were to change for him, I feel like Embiid's minutes would probably be the ones to see a decrease in order for things to be opened up for Tatum. It's that, or it's Derek White as well, who got the, out of the players who actually got rotational minutes in this game, Derek White was the least with 15 minutes in this game. Everybody else was at least 16. Kevin Durant was right below that 17-minute mark. But, I'm not sure we're going to see anything really change on the rotational front. And it's funny how everybody complains about this for Steve Kerr, even though the fact that the U.S. really has been... I don't know if I would fully say they're cruising, obviously, because the South Sudan game happens and everybody freaks out about that, but I feel like the U.S. is sort of just on a crash course for that gold medal, no matter what the rotations are. But definitely let us know how you feel in the comment section, because it's a funny thing talking about how all of this plays out. The U.S. is significantly the best team out there, and they are probably, again, destined for that gold, but based off of how it looks along the way, there's still going to be a lot of conversations generated from there. But Team US, they play their next game on Wednesday afternoon against South Sudan, so we'll see whether or not they're able to bring that same level of intensity that they came out with during this past game. But we are going to be taking a break now, and when we come back on the other side, we are going to dive into some of the MLB trades that took place over the course of the weekend. The trade deadline now at this point is just over 24 hours away, and we are seeing an onslaught of moves. So I want to start by talking about the New York Yankees acquiring Jazz Chisholm Jr., the former All-Star, and how it plays in very well to what they need offensively, but defensively, they are still going to have to be figuring out the pieces here, and we've already heard at least one of the Yankees not be totally on board with what the vision looks like for that. So we will break down all of that, but first, our break here. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.